everybody. Welcome to this morning's post-cabinet press briefing. I am Leslie Ann Johnson, again sitting in for Press Secretary Ms. Philomena Robertson. And today we're coming to you via Zoom. So welcome to all of you. Of course, those of you on Channel 22 on Facebook and in the diaspora. We are practicing the social distancing policy. So we're coming to you, as I mentioned, via Zoom. So colleagues, may I just remind you to mute your mics kindly. This morning we have the Minister for Trade, Industry, Cooperatives and CARICOM Affairs, the Honorable Oliver Joseph, and we will be talking basically mainly about the stimulus package as announced by Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell during his address to the nation last week. So I now hand over to the Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all viewers and listeners of this program. I want to start out by going through the stimulus package because since its announcement, we have had calls from every sector to determine whether they will benefit from the package, and some pointing out that they did not see anything in the package for them. So I think it is important that I explain every measure, each one that was announced in detail, stating exactly how they will apply and the type of relief that you can get for the package. Before I start, let me clarify certain things, certain statements I've heard about the stimulus package by stating, firstly, the government of Grenada does not have a central bank on its own. So monetary policy does not lie in the purview of the Minister of Finance. 8 member states formed the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank in 1983. Monetary policies are governed by the Monetary Council of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, and I will explain the difference. So what you have here is fiscal measures, that is, measures of taxation that the government has control over in this fiscal policy. So every time you hear the word fiscal policy used, think about taxation and government's recurrent spending and the government raising revenue and spending. Monetary policy has to do with interest rate payment. The central bank role is to help control inflation. They determine monetary policy, the amount of money that we place in circulation. The interest rate is set by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. The value of the currency, as you know, we have a fixed currency rate with respect to the US dollar. The EC dollar is pegged to the US at a fixed rate of 2.7169. The only way this rate could change is that it requires a unanimous decision of the Monetary Council. Every member state must vote. Similarly, interest rates, the ECCB, these are monetary policy that's set. So the Minister of Finance could not announce a drop in interest rate as you see happen in Trinidad. I listened to the Minister of Finance in Trinidad announcing a number of monetary policy, Trinidad having their own central bank, and one that stood out very clearly with me is the credit card interest rate in Trinidad is 24%, and that was dropped to 14%. And on lending from the central bank to commercial banks, because some central banks are known as lenders of last resort. So if commercial banks turn to the central bank, there will be a rate. And all these are monetary policy. So when the comments made publicly, what you've heard that, well, there is no reduction in interest rate, the minister did not instruct the bank to drop the interest rate. Well, he cannot do that. So what I'm going to do is talk about the stimulus package. By starting to explain, we are looking at fiscal measures, right, and not monetary policies, which is outside the control of the Minister of Finance and is handled by the Monetary Council of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. So The minister announced $20 million worth of payment support to the hoteliers, restaurant, bars, small travel agents, and income support. So I'll deal with the first part before I go to the income support. The minister said that $20 million worth of payroll support to hoteliers. Well, of course, that should be self-explanatory, that the hotel may be required to send home workers because the occupancy rate would have dropped drastically. If you close commercial airlines from bringing in passengers, well, there is no tourists to go to hotel, so there will be a drop. And if there is no tourist in the hotel, then you cannot keep your staff. So payroll support means what it says, that the hotel will be assisted in meeting the payroll of staff. At this time, we cannot allow workers to go home and not receiving income at this time. So that is the payroll support. The other part of this, the first one, is income support to public buses, taxi drivers, tourist vendor, and other such identified hospitality-based businesses. Again, if you notice, the taxi drivers and public buses and tourist vendors, they're all linked to the tourism sector. And therefore, with the reduction in tourist arrivals, it means that they too will be affected. Public buses, as you know, in Grenada, we have a private transport system. The government owns no buses. It's all private. These private bus owners have indicated that less people are traveling now on the buses to go to work and to various areas. Social distancing will require that you do not have the normal 15 people on a bus crowded in, and therefore they are required to carry less passengers, and therefore the income will be seriously affected. And that's why the other part of the statement is income support. The adjustment, the second measure, adjust the small hoteliers facility at the Grenada Development Bank to support all hoteliers by injecting an additional $7 million to this facility. There is a facility that small hoteliers can benefit from the Grenada Development Bank. The measure announced is to increase that amount so that more funds will become available to small hoteliers. So this additional amount is $7 million to allow small hoteliers to gain access to additional cash. The third one announced is to work with the NIS, National Insurance Scheme, to provide unemployment benefit support due to the fallout of this pandemic, and that is estimated at $10 million. As you are aware, or you may be aware, NIS only pay sick benefit when you submit a certified sick certificate signed by a medical doctor. If you have to stay home as a result of this situation now, the intention is to get NIS to support workers who will have to stay home as a result of the decision that if you are feeling sick or if you have symptoms, you should not come out to work, but you do not have a certified sick leave. But that is not the first time this has happened. I recall after Hurricane Ivan, the NIS did pay unemployment benefit, give unemployment support to workers who had to stay home because of the effect of Hurricane Ivan. So a similar measure will be implemented this time. Fourth, suspend the 2% increase in NIS payment for the period. You will recall that as from the 1st of January, NIS will increase by 2%, 1% from the employer, 1% from the employee. The intention here is not to deduct this 2% increase during that period, but have it suspended until this situation is over. 5, encourage the trade union movement to work with the business community to support the use of vacation leave as a first option in the event of the business having skeleton staff. What that means is that you have workers there who would accumulate vacation leave. The idea here is to allow them to use the vacation leave during that period. And then after the use of vacation leave, they look at the support from the National Insurance Scheme. Number 6, expand the public sector investment program in an effort to boost employment at the community level. So what that means? The government has the public sector investment program that creates jobs at the local level. At this time, in order to boost economic activity with the slowdown in the tourism sector, you need to boost other sectors. And therefore, the government would spend more money on programs to boost employment so that you will have people still earning income. You will have disposable income. You cannot stop all the employment activities because people would not have income. Remember, we have a lot of people that are daily paid, that get temporary jobs and so on, and they too need to earn income during this period while this is going on, and that is the measure is to expand the public sector investment program. So at the community level, you see work still ongoing. 7 is to suspend the monthly advance payment and corporate income tax for the period. So businesses that have to pay corporate income tax for this period, 3-month period, that will be suspended, the advance payment. Also the annual stamp tax. Annual stamp tax is paid by installment. You don't pay, it's not a tax that you pay at the end of the year. You have to pay the annual stamp tax every month is due, and you pay it. So that will be suspended for businesses that are paying on annual stamp tax. Because remember, annual stamp tax could affect your cash flow because you're taking the cash to paying, and because of the implications of the measures of this current situation, the government is saying, well, you could, for the next 3 months, we'll suspend the installment payment of the annual stamp tax. Number 9, expand the small business soft lending facility at the Grenada Development Bank by an additional $5 million. Well, this is the one that I get the most call about. This year, the Minister of Finance, the government announced, increased the small business loan from $3 million to $5 million in the budget. And now the Minister of Finance has announced an additional $5 million because the small business people are very concerned about the decline in the business activity as a result of this virus. And therefore, by injecting an additional $5 million, the small business facility can help more people at this time. As I indicated, you need to have economic activity still taking place within the economy. And this is a boost for the small business sector. Number 10 is to place on the price control list certain cleaning items to prevent price gouging at this time. Price gouging simply means increasing prices above the normal market price of goods. And that will be limited to it will include hand sanitizers, bleach, hydrogen peroxide, and hand soap, the areas that we get a complaint about. How that will work? These measures will be placed on a list, and the wholesale and retail markup will be controlled. For example, if you put hand sanitizer, bleach, and hydrogen peroxide on the price control list, the government will determine that the maximum margin, profit margin you could apply at the wholesale is 10%, as an example, and at the retail, if you're a retailer, 15%. I'm using 10 and 15 because when you look at the price control currently, that is about the average markup you have. So now the wholesaler and retailer can determine whatever markup that they want because it is not price control. So if there is a shortage, you could say, all right, so we're going to apply a 50% profit margin on it, or 70% because it's in high demand. If the government places these items on a price control list, the price control inspectors will have the right to see the costing, how you arrive at the wholesale and retail price. Under the Prices Control Act, they will have the power. In fact, they have to approve it first before you sell under the Act. And therefore, this will be gazetted shortly after discussion with the Ministry of Finance and Trade to determine the markup that the government should institute. And that is the benefit of putting it under the price control list so that you do not have a situation where the wholesaler or retailer could apply whatever margin they want on these items. And that is how it will benefit the consumers by controlling the margins on these things. Number 11, follow all necessary exemption protocols to provide incentives to private labs and medical facilities procuring items to support the fight against COVID-19. So if you are in the business of, if you have a medical facility and you are procuring items, the government will support you and consider the reduction in the import duties on these items for your laboratory and medical facilities. That is what is considered here in number 11. Number 12, increase farm labor support to immediately boost agricultural production island-wide. Government is also giving consideration to support for farmers and fish exporters who have recently been affected as a result of international travel restriction. The farm labor support, this farm labor support is meant to provide labor to farmers at a cost to the government to boost agricultural production. Now, the concern I've heard from the people calling into the Ministry of Trade say, well, if you ban the cargo vessels from coming in, how we will get supplies? So this is intended to boost local production. Remember, we import almost everything that we need. So if we boost agricultural production, at least we could have food security on the island. And the incentive there is to provide support to farmers at this time. For the fish exporters, I recall, I want to be exact here, last week, Wednesday, fish was sold for $5 a pound because the fish was there for export, ready to be exported, and then the ban came. And they stuck with all this nice yellowfin tuna. So I immediately went and I bought 20 pounds because I've never got fish at $5. Well sliced and everything, all I had to do was season it. And there was such a big rush, I was told by the person who bought the fish from me. And the next day, all the fish were sold out. But what happened to the other fish coming in? So the government is saying that we will give support to fish exporters at this time as a result of the restriction, but you will have to demonstrate that a loss, because if you sell in $5, even if it's a break-even position, and all the fish is being sold at the market because it is $5, so more and more people are consuming fish, then we'll look at it, see what is the position with regards to your income, and determine the level of support. Through the Ministry of Fisheries, we determine the level of support. Of course, if you keep proper records, it will make it easier. You could show what your intake for the January to February, March, or last year figures, you present it, and show this my annual export. Because these things, these incentives have to be quantified by the various ministries. It's not like, because the government announced incentive, that you go in and say, well, for the next 3 months, I will not, my operating profit will drop by 50%. So I'm claiming it has to be done in a scientific way. You have to show the effects, and then the government will respond. So you will notice from what I'm saying, going down the list, you have almost all the sectors I've heard. They complain again about the agricultural sector is left out. That is why it's important to explain. All the sectors have been considered. Number 13 is government commits to ensuring that the cost of electricity will be reduced by 30% for the months of March, April, and May in the first instance to all consumers. This will not apply to a few companies that have special concessionary arrangement. Well, you would not see it applying in March because we almost to the end of March. You will see it reflected later on. 14, financial institutions have also agreed in principle to provide a moratorium on principal and interest payment to their clients on condition for the 3-month period in question in the first instance. So what I end in here with is what I began by saying. If you notice how it is worded, the financial institutions have agreed in principle because the Minister of Finance cannot set interest rates for financial institutions. Whether it's the credit card rate or the on-lending rate, we do not have our own central bank, and therefore only the Monetary Council of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank could take these decisions. So the package is an all-inclusive package. Started with tourism sector, you went on to the small business support, talk about agricultural support, fisheries, and concessions to medical facilities, private labs. So it is a wide range of concession that is announced for the next 3-month period. Thereafter, it will be reviewed, and if necessary, other measures will be announced. But for the next 3 months, this is the stimulus package, and it is called that because you need to stimulate the economy. Right? You need economic growth. People still need to have spending power. Business needs still need to function to provide their services, and therefore, the intention of this stimulus package is to ensure that the economy continues to perform. Of course, we cannot perform at optimal level with these measures. There will be drastic decline, as we have already seen in the tourism sector. Government revenues will be affected because we are an open economy that relies heavily on input duties and taxes, or international, what we call international transactions. Roughly 50% of all government's recurrent revenue comes from border taxes. The actual figure for last year was 48%. So almost 50% is collected at the port. So, and that is in this revenue that is used to pay wages, salaries, pensions, and meet government's recurrent expenditure. So automatically you could see that with the fall in revenue, by closing down the port, you will have a drastic reduction in government revenue. And therefore that will affect the government's intake, and therefore the way the government can give the support, because over the years, the last 5 years, the economy has been managed in such a way that we were able to meet our recurrent expenditure without going into overdraft or any loan facilities. It is managed in a way that the government was able to meet its recurrent expenditure on a timely basis. Every month, we meet our recurrent expenditure without having to resort to overdraft facility or loans. And therefore, the economy is in a strong position. There will be some negative fallout, but we are taking measures to ensure that assistance are provided to the various sectors. The International Monetary Fund has pledged 50 billion US to help countries fight this COVID-19 and the situation that we are in. They have calculated what the fallout will be. Grenada has made application for funds from the International Monetary Fund, and we are looking at other areas where funding can become available to assist us in helping these various sectors to adjust, and so the government could continue providing all its services to our population, to all our citizens. So that is what I wanted to explain with respect to this government stimulus package this morning. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. So, colleagues, the floor is now opened for questions. Of course, state your name and your media house and proceed to ask your questions. For those of you not asking yet, just kindly leave your mics on mute still. Thank you. Prime Minister, let me ask quickly while we await our colleagues. You mentioned the last statement you made, Grenada made application for funds. Are we asking for a specific amount?
The Minister of Finance, there was a video conference meeting with all finance ministers in the Caribbean and the IMF, and he presented a package. We not sure how much has been approved, so we would not want to say at this stage until we get the approval, then announce what the package is.
So Rena Pierre has a question.
Yes.
Go right ahead, Rena. We're hearing you. Go ahead.
Okay, so one of my question is, where exactly is the money coming from as it relates to the COVID-19 respondent?
Yes, it's coming from government's current revenue. The package that is announced is coming from government's current revenue.
Rena? Rena's still there? Rena, do you have another question?
Yes, I have a lot of other questions.
Okay, but go right ahead.
Does government have to go through parliaments to access these funds? Also, as it relates to agriculture, how are we exactly boosting agriculture? How are we supporting the farmers? How are they being assisted in this regard? And how is the assistance going to be distributed?
Yeah. All right. So to be more specific, the support, as is called farm labor support. The Ministry of Agriculture will have gangs going out to the farmers that they have identified as needing the support. And these these workers will be paid from the Ministry of Agriculture budget. That is the direct support to the farmer. Farm laborers are sent to your farm. They work 2, 3, 4 fortnights. The Ministry of Agriculture from its budget will pay these workers for giving the support to the farmers.
Linda Straker, good morning. Linda, good morning. Are you hearing us? Okay, she's asking a question here. Ask the minister to please explain the process for making claims for payroll support.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's an extremely good question. So, as I said before, if you have your hotel, yeah, you know your payroll, that's a standard thing every month. So you said, well, we'll have to send home 50% of the staff because we cannot pay them, or whatever number it is. You submit your claim, your request for the support to the Ministry of Finance. The amount is verified because you have to present supporting documents, and then the award will be made to the hotelier on a case-by-case basis.
Do we have another question? Rena? Rena, are you hearing us? Rena,
Hello?
you have your hands up. Rena, go ahead.
Yes, I have another question. As it relates to the 2% suspension of the 2% increase of NIS, I know that legislation have to be put in place as it relates to that. How soon are we going to see this happening? Understanding also that government met with bus operators yesterday. Can you give us an update on that meeting?
All right, let me answer the first question. First of all, there is legislation that has been passed to increase it. You only need legislation if you're going to revert back to the 1%, if you revert to the 9. What this measure is just to suspend it. So where the legislation is passed saying you must increase it, the government is saying, well, for the 3-month period, we suspend it. So the only way you need to go back to Parliament is if you are reversing the decision to go back to 1%. But that is not what is happening here, because you will have to continue with the 2% after the period. The other question you asked, what was the other question? Yes.
An update as it relates to the bus operators.
Oh, yes, the
meeting
bus
yesterday.
operators, right. So they met with Minister Bowen, Minister for Transport. They met with the Bus Association. And today, a joint release will be put out between the government and the Bus Association. So today, a joint release will be put out to the public.
All right, we have a question here from Anisha.
Yes.
Rena,
is
you're not
government
finished?
looking to remove or reduce VAT on basic food items?
That was not announced by the Minister of Finance. What I indicated is this is a 3-month period and will be reviewed as the situation develops. So a new package will be looked at, new arrangement facilities will be considered as we move forward.
What about property? What about payment of property tax?
Yes, the payment of property tax, yes, that continues. What the taxes that I announced from the business payment, because they have to pay it on a monthly basis. As you are aware, property tax will be due by June 30th. You see, not all taxes are due at the same time, you know. You have some taxes that you pay monthly, some are due quarterly, and some are due yearly. Property tax is due yearly. By the 30th of June of this year, it will be due, and then the 30th of June the following year. So what we are looking at, the immediate relief, what the taxes that will affect you immediately, as I said, the stamp tax, as I indicated, that businesses will have to pay. The stamp tax comes from your cash flow, from your cash. And therefore, the government is saying for the next 3 months, we will suspend the payment of the stamp tax, which is due on a monthly basis.
Okay. My final question for now is as it relates to financial assistance to businesses. Now, does these assistance come with expectations or mandates as it relates to the layoff of workers? Because I understand that there are over 200 hotel workers right now home due to the present situation.
The first measure announced in the package is a $20 million worth of payroll support. And I explained payroll support to mean that you are paying the workers that are home.
So whether the workers are in the hotel or not, they're expected to be paid, because the situation that I am aware of is that the workers were asked to sign a termination letter that they accepted to be terminated, and they are home presently not receiving pay.
These workers you'll be receiving pay either fortnightly or monthly. So if you're home for the last 2 days, You don't expect them to receive pay like yesterday. So, and as I say, indicated again, each hotel will submit its payroll statement, its accounting statement to be examined and make the claim for this payroll support.
All right. We
Because
have a question.
I understand what you're saying, Minister, but what I'm saying is that the workers is not only home regarding pay. You know, they actually don't have a job because the situation is that their job was terminated.
If the job is terminated, that means that you are no longer working. The payroll support will apply to you. If you have been terminated and you're a hotel worker, the payroll support will be extended to you.
Are you through, Rina?
And yeah.
All right, so let me just get in a
I
question.
have something I understand.
Wait, can you just hold a second? Let me just get in a question. Rina, can you
Somebody
hold a
else
second? Let me
like
just
to
get a
ask a
question in.
question?
Yes, just hold a second, please. From Anisha Samuel, was consideration given to an exemption on personal income tax, reducing the VAT and fuel prices over the 3 months?
No, look at personal income tax. It is a payroll tax they deducted when you receive your salary of over 3,000 a month. If you're receiving your salary as usual, why would the government then suspend the income tax payment? Remember, as I explained, the government need to collect revenue to continue providing services to people. So only if you are negatively impacted. So if your salary is less than 3,000, you don't pay personal income tax. If you pay, so she's asking about the person who pay personal income tax, but you are not disadvantaged in any way. If you're getting your full salary, you pay the normal percentage, 10% or 28 if you're in the upper bracket, then you are not affected. So that is not part of the incentive package. With respect to what the goods said, VAT and but she,
Reducing VAT and fuel prices
yes,
over the 3
I will
months.
reiterate that other measures will be examined. In this package, you have everything covered at one time. As the situation develops and as the government examine the financial position, there will be review of the stimulus package.
We have a question here from Rikisha St. Louis GIS. With regards to the suspension of the 2% NIS, will it be paid back over time or at the end of April, employers and employees will resume the regular payments?
I will say it's just a suspension. So for a particular period, at the end of the period, the government will make a determination on what next, how to deal with the period for under which the suspension was granted.
Our next question, how will the farm labor support program be monitored to ensure there isn't overproduction of local produce, which will eventually lead to a glut?
No, actually, that's a good question. The Ministry of Agriculture actually tell the farmers what to plant, you know. When you clean up the lot, you say, okay, you want the farm labor support, you submit, you have 10 acres of land, we want you to plant these things. If you agree, the Ministry of Agriculture give you the support and they monitor it. So yes, that's a good question. The Ministry of Agriculture provide the farm labor support for you, tell you what are the things to plant, you agree to do that, then you get the support. And it will be monitored by the extension officers of the Ministry of Agriculture.
Thank you, Minister. Rina, I believe you had another question or two. Are you there? Linda Straker. We have a question from Linda? Okay, I'm not seeing it. Okay, so we have one from Linda Straker. The closure of international flights is having a negative effect on the supplies of pharmaceuticals for people already in need of NCD drugs. Will government consider providing freight support for those who may have to use private cargo courier?
And the simple answer is yes. So it's closed, but medical supplies will be allowed in, as well as medical personnel will be allowed inside, because you can't shut out the supply if you have a number of cases in Grenada and you need medical supply, then you have to allow it to come in. So yes, medical supplies will be allowed in.
We have a Simone from Top FM. Is the government considering a lockdown and encouraging the workforce to stay home for at least the next 2 weeks?
I can only speak to the stimulus package at this time, not to government policy regards to lockdown. I suggest that they stay tuned. There is a committee working on such measure, and an announcement will be made if and when any such decision is taken.
She had a follow-up, which I guess, what is happening to government workers? Are there any measures to amend their schedules? Which I guess would fall into the same thing. All right, so let me, Minister, going back to the last point you made, there will be some negative fallouts, tough times and all that. What should we consider as the main collective focus when this period is over to ensure that the economy is revived?
Well, the stimulus package is to ensure that we minimize the risk or the total fallout, the level of fallout. So when this period is over, we are hoping that the impact would not be so severe. It would be, but at least during this stimulus package is to keep things going. Without this package, the impact would be far worse. And therefore, measures will be announced after so assuming now that we go back to normal and the airport is now open back up and the cruise ship port is open up and everything going good, that we hope after the 3 months that will happen. I don't know what the projection is at the moment, how long it will last. I don't think any one of us know that yet. But we're hoping that after the 3 months we could see things returning back to normal.
MTV, good morning. Unmute
Good
your
morning, Rachel. My question is with regards to the 3 months moratorium. Qualifies for that and the financial institutions involved.
Rachel, can you just go over the question, please? There was a little disturbance.
The 3 months moratorium explains who qualifies for that and the financial institutions involved, which includes the credit union and so on.
Yeah. So each financial institution will determine the conditions under which you get the moratorium and the principal and interest payment. For example, I know one financial institution that says, we will give you a break on the principal, but you will have to pay the interest during that period of time. So these conditions are set by the institution themselves because the government cannot mandate them to do that. They held discussion with them. They reached an agreement in principle that they will consider it, the moratorium, with respect to payment of principal and interest with conditions. So these conditions will vary from institutions to institution.
Rena, do you have a next question? Unmute your mic, Rena.
I have another question. How are we going to facilitate the 30% deduction for the next 3 months as it relates to electricity? And I just got recent information that Carnival 2020 is postponed. Can you speak as it relates to that? The launch, of Carnival 2020 is postponed. The launch of Carnival 2020 is postponed.
No, I cannot speak on that. The Carnival Committee will make an announcement in due course, so I'm not aware of any such announcement. With respect to the reduction in electricity costs, we have to examine this very carefully. As you know, we had the award. The award just came out. We are holding negotiations, and we think that it will be a good incentive to see the reduction in electricity rate over the next 3 months, because it will be a boost to the local economy.
Somebody else is asking, can someone who has had a lapse on payments of NIS, maybe due to illness or something, for their contribution, can they benefit from that package still?
A lapse, you mean June for the next 3 months or before?
Lapsed previously, they lapsed for whatever reason.
No, well, these measures announced just the for regard to respect to NIS is the 2% increase suspension and the payment to workers who have to be home asking NIS to contribute to the unemployment benefit. The arrears, I cannot speak to the if you in arrears of NIS before.
Nisha Paul, good morning.
Hello.
Go ahead, Nisha. Good morning. We're hearing you.
Hi. Hi, good morning. My question has to deal with are we engaged in the widespread testing? If not, therefore we're unable to find out the true situation of the virus situation. What is the economic plan for a widespread infection situation? And also, social distancing is something that is being encouraged at this time. What would you say to those who feel that public transportation being allowed to ply the routes cannot effect social distancing? What would be your advice in this regard?
From the medical profession, what is happening now for testing, if you are suspected of having the symptoms associated with COVID-19, you will be tested. When you talk about widespread testing, there is no need at this time just for widespread testing, because you need to narrow down the testing to certain contact, what they call contact tracing. So you've heard the first case, and the Ministry of Health announced they are doing contact tracing. They want to know all the people that this individual came in contact with so that they can be tested. With respect to the social distance, while the government announced social distances, the responsibilities on every individual. I've known countries that have, even in the Caribbean, have now declared state of emergency, and some a curfew to deal with it. Because even when the government announced the social distancing, people last Saturday was still all over the place, still traveling on packed buses, still visiting bars, still going into the market. And so it seems to me that perhaps more drastic action may need to be taken by the government to enforce social distances, because this science is out there. The way it is spread is by contact, by people get close to each other. And therefore, we should keep our distance. The government, every day, the chief medical officer and Dr. George Mitchell, the coordinator, every day, I'm hearing this message out on the radio, telling people, please, keep your distance, wash your hands, do all these things. You see, individuals must take responsibility. Italy, if you know the culture in Italy, see how many deaths in Italy? I have visited Italy once. Italians love to eat out and go to bars and socialize. It's part of the culture. Every you go to Italy, every restaurant was filled, every bar. That's the way that's part of the culture. And you see how rapidly it spread. They were told, keep their distance, reduce on your social gathering and contact. They did not pay the heed, and now the death toll is so high, it's frightening. And so I agree with you, caller, that the issue of public traveling and public transport, crowded, is a cause of concern. All I could do is appeal to people to take responsibility for their action. The statements will be issued again by the Ministry of Health, encouraging people to follow the protocols that have been established. And I hope we will see more cooperation from the general public on this matter.
We have a question, Minister, from the Grenadian Voice newspaper. On what basis is the suspension of the 2% NIS payment if you're saying a person receiving a salary of over $3,000 and pays income tax is not disadvantaged, then that premise should stand for anybody receiving an income. If one is not receiving an income, then one does not pay NIS.
Because there's a recent increase, the 1% additional, remember from January, the person who would have been paying 4% will have to pay 5%. The employer, on the other hand, have to pay the additional. This is an additional cost to employers, you know. So when they announce the suspension, remember, the employers are paying towards a social security for you, for your benefit. It's not a cost to the employee. It's a benefit to the employee, but it's a cost to the employer. So you give a relief to the employer, but at the same time, you want the employee who has to pay the additional 1% too, you give the relief. But the employer has to pay this additional 1% for every employee in his thing, and that's what the relief is targeting.
Anybody else? Rachel? MTV? Go ahead. Unmute.
Thank you. Minister, with regards to Grenada, right? You said the government have been in discussions with Grenada. What was the conversation like, or what was the response? Because some people heard went to pay their bill, and the cashiers say that they are not aware of any agreement between government and Grenada with regard to the 20%.
No, I did not say there was any agreement, and I don't know the state of the discussion. All I'm saying is that there is discussion, but I'm not aware of any agreement that has been reached as yet. I'm saying in order to get the reduction, discussion has started. That's all.
Nisha Paul, go right ahead.
Hi, I didn't get the response to the other part of the question. What is the economic plan for widespread infection situation?
As I said, these measures are taken in stages. So, pre-announcement of the affected person, certain measures were announced. After the announcement, it was ramped up and other new measures been introduced. If there is a situation of widespread coronavirus, then the Ministry of Health will respond, and the Ministry of Finance, the government of Grenada, will also announce different measures or review all the current measures.
Minister, from Simone, Top FM is for call centers and other similar areas. Is government doing anything to ensure the corporate citizens are adhering to the measures put in place, like social distancing?
Well, as I said, everybody keep asking, what government doing? Government has announced a social distance, and yet you're asking about the government. What are individuals doing to ensure that they protect themselves? Because government has announced the measure. So it is individuals now to comply with the measures as announced. And the situation reviewed, let me make that point to the caller, was that you're raising some good concern, but the situation is very fluid. Every day the committee meets to review the situation on a daily basis, and reports are released from these meetings. So on a daily basis, I encourage everyone to monitor the release from the Ministry of Health that's put out and the GIS, because every day you have releases coming out because of the nature of the situation.
All right, colleagues, it's time to wrap up. I think we have about 3 people waiting to ask questions, and then we'll wrap up after that. Rena Pierre? Rena, go ahead. Unmute.
Are you there?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, so as it relates to NIS and the Grenada, tell me, since we're in discussion, does that mean that it doesn't take effect as it relates to this month? Because the announcement was that it would start from this month end. Also, would it come to, or would it reach to government making the decision of having curfew, since a lot of people are not adhering to social distancing? Is that considered? Another thing I wanted to ask is relating to what is government doing to ensure that whether it's a verbal discussion or a written discussion between businesses and the issue of assistance, ensuring that employees are being paid or stayed employed as it relates to the situation?
All right, so with respect to your first question, I said the negotiations, you're never sure what is the outcome of a negotiation when you're negotiating, so negotiations are taking place. The curfew and state of emergency and so on, whether government should declare it, as I indicated, the situation is fluid. Every day, announcements will be made, and these new measures will be announced if necessary. So at this point, no curfew, no state of emergency has been announced, but you never know if the committee meets daily, and therefore listen to the announcements for it. With respect to ensuring that businesses keep their workers. Now, if you have a fallout in business, given the nature of your business, and you are not collecting the amount of revenues to meet your expenditure, and you're operating at a loss, that is why the government has pledged support and has announced certain measures to assist businesses. That's the stimulus package intention, to assist businesses to stay in business.
Thank you, Rena. Now we're going to Nisha Paul and then MTV, and then we'll wrap up. Nisha?
Okay. Can you speak to the arrangements made with the bus association in terms of public transportation? Can you elaborate on those? Because I don't think there is a bus association in St. David's, and I am told that the bus drivers are still packing the buses like normal with 4 in a seat and so on. So can you speak to that, please? Thanks.
As I indicated, the bus association met with Minister Bowen yesterday, and today they will put out a release that will address the concerns that you are asking.
Rachel, MTV? Go ahead. Unmute your mic, Rachel. Rachel, we're still not hearing you. Go ahead now. Go ahead.
I have 2 questions. Businesses, the $2 million, does it apply only to the tourism industry or other businesses? Because other businesses are vastly affected by the dreaded COVID-19, right? And my next question is, government announced social distances, but employees are still working within various ministries where there is not a 6 feet social distancing as announced. What it is that government will be putting in place to ensure, okay, your work is done, yes, but the employees are safe.
All right, the first one is not 2 million government announced, it's 20 million. Right, and I said and then the other measures to assist businesses in terms of the payment of the taxes that are due on a monthly basis. And as I said again, the situation will be reviewed and further announcement will be made. With respect to the social distancing and workers, the first advisory that went out indicated that if you are suffering from any respiratory problem, you should not report to work. That was the first thing. So if you have less people reporting, you'll have more space. Again, the situation will be reviewed for ministries that have close sitting arrangement. The situation will be reviewed in keeping with the protocol for social distancing, and a release put out by the committee that meets on a daily basis.
Colleagues, thank you so much. Before we wrap up, just to let you know, based on the current, this is something from the Spice Mask Corporation, based on the current situation surrounding COVID-19, Spice Mask Corporation announces the postponement of its carnival launch scheduled for the 2nd of May 2020. So please keep that in mind. And we thank you so much for joining us via Zoom. For all of you in the diaspora, those looking on the channel 22 on our Facebook page, we thank you so much. Honorable Minister for Trade, Industry, Cooperatives and CARICOM Affairs, the Honorable Oliver Joseph, and of course, Ms. Michelle Braffett, representing the School for the Deaf. Thank you so much, everyone, for viewing. Have a blessed day, everybody.
The electricity sector.
Suzanne, do you know that the government sold majority shares in the then government-owned electricity company?
You're serious? Grenlec was owned by government? So how much they sold the company for?
The NDC administration in 1994 sold 50% of the shares to an American company for $15 million.
15 million? You call that sell? That was a giveaway, man.
Well, I'm happy someone like you said that.
So, what the NNP government trying to do now?
Suzanne, the main reason the government is trying to change the law is to ensure that ordinary Grenadians like you pay less for electricity. Do you remember when we used to pay more than $2 per minute for some telephone calls? Well, today we pay as little as 30 cents per minute for local calls. That's because the NNP administration took the bold decision back then to change the law and open up the telecoms market.
Boy, I remember how much I fought against that. The thing is, I never trusted that plan. But now I've seen the benefits. I can even talk to Tom, Dick, and Harry for free. I mean, Jane, Jill, and Mary.
Well, I'm not concerned about who you talk to. But more importantly, Suzanne, how much was your last electricity bill?
Don't go there. I was just disconnected. I can't even afford it.
That's why the government is trying so hard to find a way to reduce the cost of electricity in Grenada. We have the highest rates in the region.
COVID-19 spreads from person to person through the droplets that are produced when someone coughs or sneezes, which makes it easy to spread between people in close contact. Now let's get prepared to stay healthy.
To reduce your chance of catching or spreading COVID-19, practice these simple everyday preventative measures. Droplets can also land on surfaces, so ensure that you wash your hands frequently for a minimum of 20 seconds or sing the happy birthday song twice. Avoid touching your face, especially your eyes, nose, and mouth. If soap and water are not readily available, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with an alcohol content between 60 and 90%. 70% is ideal.
When you cough or sneeze, cover your nose and mouth with a flexed elbow or a tissue. Dispose of the tissue immediately and then wash your hands. If you notice someone has a fever and cough or other symptoms of respiratory illness, avoid close contact when possible. Let's all do our part to ensure that each and every Grenadian remains healthy. Our health is our collective responsibility.
PAHO team lauds Grenada's COVID-19 preparedness and mitigation efforts. We'll have details to this story and more in the National Report. With the details to the news for Monday, March 23rd, I am Rikisha St. Louis. A team from the Pan American Health Organization has praised Grenada for what it says is a significant amount of work undertaken in all of the functional areas in response to COVID-19. Dr. Rufus Ewing, PAHO's advisor for health systems and services for Barbados and the Caribbean, commended Grenada for its work in this area. Dr. Ewing and 4 other members of a PAHO delegation are here to do an assessment and to assist Grenada in looking at its readiness for COVID-19.
Identifying various triaging areas for persons who are suspected of having the disease, looking at the transport systems, having a dedicated ambulance services with personnel for transport of persons who are suspected of having COVID, as well as the development of the various isolation areas and treatment for individuals. And thus far, they have identified the areas within the private ward systems. They have a total of about 17 beds available now, almost now, for the isolation and treatment of COVID patients. And I noticed this morning there's additional staffing coming from Cuba, nursing staff, and we are here to continue to help train individuals in the area of infection prevention control, rationalize the use of the PPEs, the personal protective equipment, which they do have, but in plans to get more on island here. And it's important that we, yes, protect staff, but at the same time, in protecting staff, we need to ensure that the PPEs are used appropriately so that they can last for the duration of this epidemic.
Dr. Ewing says Grenada's progress is surpassing expectations.
You have more than I thought based on our last assessment and review, based on because I think the country responded to a questionnaire analysis that we did, and based on that there were some gaps and deficiencies, and those gaps have been covered. Particularly the isolation units and quarantine facilities, etc. So I'm happy with the progress that has been made, and I think they are ready to deal with COVID cases. Yes, is there room for improvement? Yes, and we'll continue to do so as we evolve. I mean, there are many other countries much more resourceful than Grenada that is not as prepared as they should be. And so yes, I think they are prepared, but there are room for improvement, and we will discuss those with the staff tomorrow as to how we can better prepare.
He urged the people to utilize the helplines 458-4787 and 538-4787 if experiencing flu symptoms to reduce the risk of transmission and infection, especially in a public transportation system. Health Minister Honorable Nicholas Steele is warning that some individuals can be forcefully quarantined if they do not adhere to the advice for self-quarantine or social distancing. During an emergency press conference Sunday to confirm Grenada's first case of COVID-19, Minister Steele said the ministry is concerned that many choose to ignore these calls, putting the rest of society in danger. The powers of the sanitary authority dictates that this is now a crime.
It is now seen as a crime. It is now a crime to disobey the instructions of the CMO and the sanitary authority, i.e. Dr. George Mitchell and the Minister of Health and the Ministry of Health personnel, which is a criminal offense and also gives us the authority to forcefully quarantine anyone out there that is carrying out irresponsible behavior, which is whether you are an individual on your own, not maintaining the social distancing, whether you are the owner of a private business that is allowing activities to continue on your property that is not maintaining the social distancing, or whether you are a group of individuals who decide to celebrate or continue to celebrate whatever occasion it is, and you don't maintain the social distancing. Any and all of you are, one, terribly irresponsible, putting the rest of us at risk, have no excuse, and as such will be dealt with accordingly, if not by us in the Ministry of Health and Police and the law, but by our own people who will never forget you if you too are part of the cause of possible community spread in Grenada.
Minister Steele pointed out that social distancing must be adhered to and that calls for a level of personal discipline.
We are aware of individuals in our society who do not have the discipline to date to maintain the social distancing. And these irresponsible individuals are putting the rest of us at risk. As such, the ministry and the government, in conjunction with the police, RGPF, will be taking the necessary actions as we move forward to ensure as best as possible that social distancing is maintained by all who are here in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique.
Grenada currently has 8 ventilators and 10 to 15 more are expected soon. Minister Steele says he's hoping to further increase that number, and they also expect to receive close to 2,000 test kits this week. This is the National Report. We'll have more news after the break.
COVID-19 spreads from person to person through the droplets that are produced when someone coughs or sneezes, which makes it easy to spread between people in close contact. Now let's get prepared to stay healthy.
To reduce your chance of catching or spreading COVID-19, practice these simple everyday preventative measures. Droplets can also land on surfaces, so ensure that you wash your hands frequently for a minimum of 20 seconds or sing the happy birthday song twice. Avoid touching your face, especially your eyes, nose, and mouth. If soap and water are not readily available, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with an alcohol content between 60 and 90%. 70% is ideal.
When you cough or sneeze, cover your nose and mouth with a flexed elbow or a tissue. Dispose of the tissue immediately and then wash your hands. If you notice someone has a fever and cough or other symptoms of respiratory illness, avoid close contact when possible. Let's all do our part to ensure that each and every Grenadian remains healthy. Our health is our collective responsibility.
Welcome back. The Ministry of Health is now conducting contact tracing following confirmation of Grenada's first laboratory-confirmed case of COVID-19. The patient, a Grenadian by birth, arrived in Grenada from the UK via Virgin Atlantic.
This is an imported case, and the patient is now in isolation to prevent the potential spread of the disease. She arrived in Grenada from the United Kingdom on March the 16th. She became symptomatic on March the 17th and was subsequently tested. I assure you that our very capable medical team have been actively following up and engaging in contact tracing. We are already moving to isolate and monitor several other individuals who were in close contact with the patient. This will continue for the next 14 days at minimum. The patient is exhibiting mild symptoms, so we are encouraged, but we are not complacent.
Acting Chief Medical Officer Dr. Francis Martin has assured that they are monitoring persons who would have been in close contact with the individual. He says while they are satisfied that they have the ability to test, community transmission can pose a problem.
Let us avoid having to deal with a situation where we need widespread community testing. I really hope we do not reach that stage, and we could only stay away from that stage based on the efforts of our people, the efforts of our citizens to avoid social gatherings and to take the precautions that we've been preaching. Wash your hands with soap and water, use hand sanitizer, avoid being in 6 feet of other persons, be careful with what you do, wipe your door handles. If our citizens follow this, we will never reach to a stage where we need to do widespread testing, because we will never reach to a stage where we have widespread community transmission. Citizens, we need to stop widespread community transmission so that we don't have the need for widespread testing.
With Grenada being one of the last countries in the world to have an imported case of COVID-19, he says we need to continue to do the right things as a people to come out of the situation better. Finally, in the news, Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, on Friday announced his government's plans to infuse positive financial and mental impact amidst the global pandemic COVID-19. Dr. Mitchell said government has been proactive and aggressive in its approach since January to cushion the effects of the coronavirus. Beginning April into the month of June, in the first instance, government will lend financial support to hoteliers, vendors, taxi operators, the Grenada Development Bank, the National Insurance Scheme, fishermen and farmers.
Work tirelessly to avoid staff layoffs and the loss of livelihood in the tourism sector by providing $20 million worth of payroll support to the hoteliers, restaurants, bars, small travel agents. At just the small hoteliers facility at the Grenada Development Bank to support all hoteliers by injecting an additional $7 million to this facility. Work with the NIS, that's a National Insurance Scheme, to provide unemployment benefit support due to the fallout of this pandemic, initially estimated at $10 million. Government commits to ensuring that the cost of electricity will be reduced by 30% for the months of March, April, and May in the first instance to all consumers.
Dr. Mitchell gave the assurance that Grenada will continue to dialogue with international lending agencies who continuously give support in the face of crisis.
We continue to work with our friends and partners, such as the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, and other institutions and friendly governments to pursue any other avenues that will provide us some measure of stability. We are grateful for their continued support. Sisters and brothers, friends, the word global has never had more meaning than it does today. We are all currently facing the same crisis and very similar challenges, and no one can afford to be myopic or bigoted in this fight. We have no choice but to work together.
Prime Minister Mitchell's address came 2 days before the Ministry of Health confirmed Grenada's first case of the COVID-19. That story just ended the national report for today, Monday, March 23rd. Let's recap the top story. PAHO team lauds Grenada's COVID-19 preparedness and mitigation efforts. On behalf of the entire news team here at the Government Information Service, I am Rikisha St. Louis saying thank you for joining us. Until next time.
At first, you might think it's a cold, and it could be, but COVID-19 could escalate. Here's what you need to know. According to the World Health Organization China Joint Mission on COVID-19, as of February 20th, 80% of laboratory-confirmed cases were mild to moderate, 14% were severe, and 6% were critical. Just to be clear, A mild case of COVID-19 is not like a mild cold. The symptoms will still be pretty severe. Anything less than needing oxygen puts you in this category. Severe cases do need supplemental oxygen, and critical ones are defined by respiratory or multi-organ failure. The symptoms, treatments, and timelines of having the disease vary, depending on which category patients fall into. So let's break down what having COVID-19 looks like day to day for each level of severity. It can take as few as 2 or as many as 14 days after being exposed to the novel coronavirus for the first symptom to develop. This is when it might feel like a cold or the common flu. Many patients develop fevers early on. The World Health Organization China Joint Mission saw that about 88% of people who had COVID-19 had a fever. Another study out of China showed that while only 44% of patients had a fever on admission to a hospital, 89% eventually developed one. But there have been some cases that led with gastrointestinal symptoms. Diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, and/or abdominal discomfort may appear a couple of days before respiratory symptoms. This isn't the norm, though, because COVID-19 is a respiratory disease. That means for most patients, the virus will start and end with the lungs. In the early days of infection, the virus invades lung cells. Specifically, this can damage the cilia, the hair-like projections that move around to keep airways clear of mucus and debris. When cells get infected, they die and shed off, adding to the debris and hindering your body's ability to keep stuff out of the lungs and trachea. The inflammation causes damage, and damage causes more inflammation, and this cycle could continue until there's no healthy tissue left. And inflammation might explain why a dry cough is one of the most common symptoms. Same goes for shortness of breath and phlegm production. Other symptoms that can appear around this time are fatigue, sore throat, headache, joint or muscle pain, chills, and a runny nose. By day 5, patients with pre-existing conditions might find that they have trouble breathing, and it usually takes about 7 days for a person to go to a hospital. Mild cases, though, usually clear up by this time. But those with moderate to critical cases will have developed pneumonia, which can range from non-life-threatening to severe. Recovery time for these patients could be anywhere from a few days to weeks. For some severe and critical cases, though, symptoms can escalate into acute respiratory distress syndrome. ARDS is an illness that happens when fluid builds up in the lungs. Inflammation triggers a flood of immune cells that are meant to target the infection. They're usually isolated to infected areas, but sometimes the body goes overboard, which is when the immune cells start killing anything in their path, including healthy cells. ARDS is often fatal. In critical cases, it can lead to respiratory failure, requiring advanced life support, and this is most likely when patients head to the ICU. ARDS treatment includes supplemental oxygen and mechanical ventilation. The goal is to get more oxygen into the bloodstream, since the lungs can't. When this treatment doesn't work, the lungs are basically too flooded to get any oxygen into your bloodstream. That's the cause of most COVID-19 deaths. And even when a patient survives this phase, they could be left with permanent lung damage. SARS punched holes in some infected people's lungs, giving them a honeycomb effect. And these lesions have been seen in people affected by the novel coronavirus too. Early studies found that most people who die of the disease will do so within 14 to 19 days. And on average, people who recover are released from the hospital after 2.5 weeks. But with the most critical cases, recovery could take months. Once a patient is in the recovery period, it's possible that they could still be contagious. These people should work with their doctors and public health officials to determine when they're no longer a risk. As of now, there is no vaccine for the virus, so the best way to avoid getting sick is to avoid being exposed. COVID-19 spreads easily from person to person through coughing and sneezing, so wash your hands often and avoid close contact with people who are sick, and clean and disinfect surfaces that you use daily. COVID-19 should be taken seriously, but most cases are survivable, so stay home, stay clean, and don't panic.
COVID-19 spreads from person to person through the droplets that are produced when someone coughs or sneezes, which makes it easy to spread between people in close contact. Now let's get prepared to stay healthy.
To reduce your chance of catching or spreading COVID-19, practice these simple everyday preventative measures. Droplets can also land on surfaces, so ensure that you wash your hands frequently for a minimum of 20 seconds or sing the happy birthday song twice. Avoid touching your face, especially your eyes, nose, and mouth. If soap and water are not readily available, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with an alcohol content between 60 and 90%. 70% is ideal.
When you cough or sneeze, cover your nose and mouth with a flexed elbow or a tissue. Dispose of the tissue immediately and then wash your hands. If you notice someone has a fever and cough or other symptoms of respiratory illness, avoid close contact when possible. Let's all do our part to ensure that each and every Grenadian remains healthy. Our health is our collective responsibility.
Jerry, why government trying to change laws and regulations relating to the electricity sector?
Suzanne, do you know that the government sold majority shares in the then government-owned electricity company?
You're serious? Grenlec was owned by government? So how much they sold the company for?
The NDC administration in 1994 sold 50% of the shares to an American company for $15 million.
15 million? You call that sell? That was a giveaway, man.
Well, I'm happy someone like you said that.
So, what the NNP government trying to do now?
Suzanne, the main reason the government is trying to change the law is to ensure that ordinary Grenadians like you pay less for electricity. Do you remember when we used to pay more than $2 per minute for some telephone calls? Well, today we're paying as little as 30 cents per minute for local calls. That's because the NNP administration took the bold decision back then to change the law and open up the telecoms market.
Boy, I remember how much I fought against that. The thing is, I never trusted that plan. But now I've seen the benefits. I can even talk to Tom, Dick, and Harry for free. Jane, Jill, and Mary.
Well, I'm not concerned about who you talk to. But more importantly, Suzanne, how much was your last electricity bill?
Don't go there. I was just disconnected. I can't even afford it.
That's why the government is trying so hard to find a way to reduce the cost of electricity in Grenada. We have the highest rates in the region.
Stay up to date with all that's happening with the new national party, NNP. Send us a message via text or WhatsApp on 405-8683 with your name, email, and constituency. Stay in the know with NNP. Get updated.